The wind cut sharp across the Montana plains, carrying snow and secrets in equal measure. By the time Sarah Winchester reached the edge of Crow's Lake, the sun had already dipped below the ridge, bleeding crimson across the frozen water. Her breath rose in frantic clouds, but she didn't stop running. Not when the trees whispered of betrayal, not when the ground beneath her feet trembled with old sins. Behind her, hoofbeats cracked like gunfire. Men from her own town. Men she'd once served tea to at church socials, now chasing her like an outlaw through the winter woods. All because she'd said no. No to a marriage she didn't choose. No to bearing her mother's secrets. And no to the lie her community had built its wealth upon. The lake shimmered ahead like polished silver, a mirror to the past she couldn't escape. Somewhere beneath that ice lay the truth, her mother's truth. But Sarah knew she might not live to tell it. And then, hoofbeats again, not behind her, ahead. A new sound, steady, strong, like justice thundering out of the darkness. A stranger on horseback emerged through the trees, tall in the saddle, coat flaring like wings. He didn't shout, he didn't hesitate. He only moved straight toward her, straight into danger. And with one cold, defiant act, he changed both of their lives forever. Snow clung to the windowsills of Sarah Winchester's childhood home like frostbitten memories. She stood at the hearth, rubbing her hands for warmth, though no fire crackled in the stone fireplace. The woodpile outside was low, and she hadn't dared ask the townsfolk for more, not since the council's latest visit. Her mother's journal lay open on the table, its edges singed and warped from time and secrecy. Sarah had read the passages 100 times, yet tonight she saw them differently. A line her mother had underlined twice. The land remembers, even when the law forgets. A knock at the door made her jump. She hid the journal beneath the loose floorboard and composed herself before opening it. Martha Blackwood stood outside with a faint smile and frost crusting the edge of her bonnet. Her eyes scanned the house behind Sarah, judging without words. "Sarah, dear, I thought you might like some of my preserves. Every bride should have something sweet," she said, holding out a basket. Sarah took it politely. "That's kind of you, Mrs. Blackwood." Martha stepped inside uninvited, brushing snow off her cloak. "James tells me the dressmaker needs your final measurements by tomorrow. Sunday's coming fast." Sarah stiffened. "I haven't agreed to marry your son." "You don't need to agree, darling. The council already has." Martha's tone was soft, almost tender, but her words carried iron. "It's time you honored your mother's memory properly, with obedience, with grace." Sarah's jaw clenched. "My mother believed in choice. Your mother believed in stories, in patterns and herbs, and other things this town no longer tolerates." Martha's gaze fell to the hearth, where a bundle of dried sage hung from a nail. "Your time for wandering is over. It's Sunday or nothing." She turned to go but paused at the threshold. "I'd choose Sunday if I were you. It's warmer than the alternative." When the door shut behind her, Sarah dropped the basket onto the table. Her hands trembled as she lifted the floorboard again and retrieved the journal. Her mother's voice whispered from its pages, echoing in memory more than ink. "If they come for you, head to Crow's Lake. The map is in the ring." Sarah unclasped the chain around her neck, revealing the gold ring her mother had worn every day of her life. At first glance, it was a simple heirloom, curved bands of gold wrapped in spirals. But Sarah now understood. The design was more than decorative. It was a map, a cipher, Crow's Lake. That was where her mother had gone before she died, and it was where Sarah would go now. She packed quietly, her mother's pouch of herbs, the journal, the ring, a flask of water, and enough food to last a day or two. The wind howled outside like wolves baying for justice. She waited until the moon was high, then slipped out the back door. The snow was thick, but her feet knew the path. The town of Miller's Creek lay silent behind her, its shutters drawn, its people asleep in houses built on stolen land. By the time Sarah reached the ridge above Crow's Lake, her skirts were soaked and her breath came in sharp gasps. The lake spread out below like a silver wound stitched into the earth. She saw no movement, no torches, no riders, only the wind dancing over the ice. She crept down the slope, heart pounding. There was a cave near the shore, one her mother used to visit when gathering herbs. Sarah remembered the way, even after all these years. She was almost there when she heard the sound. Hoofbeats. Too many to be a traveler. Not enough to be a rescue party. She ducked behind a thicket, heart hammering. 5 riders emerged from the tree line. One of them dismounted and knelt to inspect the snow. He held something in his hand, a silver cross on a chain. Thompson. She recognized his silhouette, cold and commanding, like a man who thought himself a prophet in a land of pagans. "She's Chloe," he said. "Tracks lead straight to the lake." Another rider spoke up. "You sure she hasn't already found it?" "If she had," Thompson replied, "we'd be chasing a firestorm instead of a girl." The men began to spread out, circling toward the water. Sarah backed away quietly, willing herself invisible. A twig snapped beneath her boot. "Over there!" they charged. Sarah ran. Snow swallowed her footsteps as she plunged down the slope toward the lake. Ice shimmered ahead. She knew it wouldn't hold, not in spots where the current moved beneath, but it was her only chance. She hit the frozen edge at full speed. The surface cracked but held. Behind her, shouts echoed. Closer now. Too close. Then came the second sound. Another horse. One she hadn't heard before. It came from the opposite side of the lake. Steady, fast, deliberate. A lone rider emerged through the trees. She couldn't make out his face. Only the silhouette of a tall man astride a bay stallion, rifle slung across his back, coat trailing like wings. And he was coming straight for her. The ice cracked beneath Sarah's boots, a spiderweb of white veins racing outward with each frantic step. Her lungs burned with cold, her heart with panic. Behind her, Thompson's men closed in, shouts growing louder, more desperate. But she didn't stop. Couldn't. A gunshot rang out. The ice at her feet exploded in a burst of snow and shards. She stumbled, skidded on her knees, and nearly slid into the black mouth of open water. "Hold your fire," Thompson barked. "We need her alive." Sarah scrambled to her feet, trembling. The lake groaned under her weight. Her mother had warned her once. Crow's Lake was treacherous in early winter. It remembered the warm flow beneath, even when the surface tried to forget. A second gunshot cracked through the air, but this one didn't come from the men behind her. It came from the tree line ahead. One of Thompson's men pitched backward, rifle clattering across the snow. Chaos erupted. The remaining riders wheeled their horses around to face the new threat, but they couldn't see him. Not yet. Sarah saw him first. The lone rider stood at the far edge of the lake, rifle raised, brim of his hat low over his brow. He didn't shout or posture. He simply stepped forward and fired again. Another man fell. The others broke ranks in a panic. Luke McCall. She didn't know his name yet, but something in her soul recognized him. Not the man himself, but what he represented. An interruption, a reckoning. Thompson ducked behind his horse, yelling orders as bullets whistled through the trees. "Flank him! Take him from the left!" Sarah took the opportunity. She turned and ran, back toward the cave her mother had once shown her. If she could make it there, if she could just hide. The ice gave way. Not all of it. Just a crack. A warning shot from the lake itself. Her boot plunged through and she screamed, yanking her leg free before the fissure widened. Her skirts were soaked, her hands frozen, but she kept moving. Then arms grabbed her from behind. "Got her!" She twisted, kicked, screamed, but they were stronger. 2 men dragged her across the ice toward the deeper center. Thompson emerged, face pale with fury, eyes locked on her like a snake about to strike. "You should have stayed in line, Miss Winchester," he hissed. "Now you'll go the way of your mother." Sarah spit blood onto the snow. "She was murdered." She slipped," Thompson said coldly. "You're about to do the same." One of the men reached into her coat and yanked out the journal. "Got it!" "No!" she cried, lunging. But they shoved her down hard. Her hands splayed across the frozen surface. She felt it buckling beneath her, whispering secrets. Another gunshot rang out. This one wasn't a warning. The man holding her journal collapsed without a sound, a dark stain blooming across his back. Luke stepped onto the ice, moving slow but sure, rifle in hand. "Let her go," he said, calm, steady, like a man who didn't ask twice. "You're outnumbered," Thompson barked. "You interfere again, McCall, and the council will..." Luke fired. The bullet hit the ice inches from Thompson's feet. The older man flinched and stumbled back. I don't care what your counsel says, Luke replied. What I care about is justice, and this ain't it. Thompson hesitated, then motioned to the last man holding Sarah. Drop her. The man did. Sarah gasped and scrambled away, ice scraping her palms raw. She crawled toward the solid shore, and Luke moved to meet her, one hand outstretched. Easy now, he murmured, kneeling to help her up. The second their hands touched, Sarah felt it. Not just warmth, but grounding, like a tether to something real. Can you walk? She nodded, legs trembling. He wrapped his coat around her shoulders and helped her toward his horse tethered just off the lake. The others didn't follow, not with his rifle trained on them. You'll regret this, Thompson shouted after them. You've made an enemy of the entire town. Luke paused, turned halfway back. Miller's Creek made an enemy of me long before tonight. They rode in silence. The wind howled like a warning, but the man beside her was a wall against it. Solid, quiet, unshakable. When they reached the ridge, he slowed the horse and glanced at her. You got a place to go? Sarah shook her head. Number, they've taken everything. He gave a slow nod, then urged the horse north. Then you're coming with me. Luke McCall's ranch lay nestled in a basin of the Bitterroot Mountains, where the wind moved slow and thoughtful through the pines, and the snow fell soft like the sky had forgotten how to rage. They reached it well after dark. Sarah slumped against Luke's back, too exhausted to speak, too stunned to cry. He didn't ask questions, not when she first began to shiver uncontrollably, not when her fingers turned blue and she clutched the soaked journal to her chest like a last breath. He simply rode harder. The ranch house rose out of the snow like a sentinel, 2 stories of weathered timber and stone, built by hands that valued permanence. Light glowed behind the windows, warm and golden. Sarah stared at it, disbelief flickering in her eyes. Safety felt foreign. A stout woman with graying braids opened the door before Luke even knocked. Dios mío, she gasped when she saw Sarah. Inside, quick. Maria, Luke said softly, easing Sarah down from the horse. Get a fire going. We need blankets, hot water, and that salve your mother used to make. Maria nodded, already pulling Sarah's arm across her shoulder. She'll be fine. You ride like the devil's after you, Luke McCall. You bring home more strays than cattle. Sarah didn't understand all the words. Her ears were ringing. Her teeth chattered too hard to speak. The warmth hit her like a fist. Firelight, the scent of pine tar and fresh bread. She collapsed into a chair before the hearth, trembling as Maria peeled the wet layers from her limbs. Luke crouched in front of her. His gloves were off now, his hands calloused but gentle as he took the ruined journal from her arms. He didn't open it. He just set it carefully beside the fire to dry. You're safe now, he said. Sarah blinked slowly. They were going to drown me. I know. They said my mother died the same way, but that wasn't true. She found something they wanted buried. Luke's jaw tightened. I believe you. She searched his face. Why? You don't even know me. He hesitated, then answered, because I knew your mother. Sarah sat up a little. You. What? Luke nodded, his gaze distant. 15 years ago, I was just starting out, driving cattle south through Miller's Creek. One of my men came down with fever. Locals turned us away, said it was punishment from God. Your mother, Catherine, took us in, nursed him back with herbs and patience. Sarah clutched the blanket tighter. She never talked about that. She was wise enough to know when silence was safer, Luke said, but I never forgot. Her eyes, they reminded me of the land. Deep, watchful. Tears stung Sarah's eyes. They called her a witch, said she was mixed. Luke's voice dropped. That town was built on lies and blood. Folks like your mother, they were just obstacles to the story the council wanted to tell. Now they're after me. Luke reached into his coat and pulled out a folded telegram. They already sent word to the territorial office, claimed you're unstable, that you tried to burn your own home, that you're unfit to hold property. Sarah's face crumpled. They'll take everything she built. Not if I can help it. She looked up, startled. Why would you risk that for me? Luke didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his pocket again and pulled out something small, smooth and silver, a pendant. Your mother gave me this before I left Miller's Creek. Said if anything ever happened to her, to watch for the signs. I didn't understand what she meant until tonight. Sarah touched the pendant. It matched the pattern on her mother's beaded pouch. She trusted you. Luke met her eyes. Now I need you to trust me. A long silence stretched between them. The fire popped. Wind rattled the shutters, but inside the air was still. Finally, Sarah said, "They're hiding something in the church records." That's what she was looking for before she died. A deed. A name. Luke nodded. "And we're going to find it." She stared at him, disbelief giving way to something steadier. Hope. "We?" Luke stood and offered her his hand. "You're not alone in this, Sarah. Not anymore." She hesitated, then took it. His grip was firm and warm, steady, just like the land her mother had once walked without fear. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the valley in silence. But inside the ranch house, a quiet alliance had begun. One stitched together not by blood, but by memory, courage, and the shared weight of long-buried truths. The next morning broke pale and cold, light creeping over the pines like it was afraid to wake the earth. Sarah stood by the frost-glazed window of the guest room, her mother's medicine pouch clutched tight in one hand, the other trailing along the pane as if she could trace the answers in the frozen glass. Below, the Double M Ranch stirred to life. Cowboy saddled horses, smoke curled from the chimney. Somewhere in the barn, someone was singing in Spanish. For the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe. Maria tapped gently on the door and entered with a bundle of folded fabric. "This belonged to my daughter," she said, setting a wool skirt and blouse on the bed. "Gone 5 winters now, but I think she would want you to wear it." Sarah touched the fabric, her throat tightening. "Thank you." Maria hesitated. "Last night, when you spoke of your mother, I knew Catherine. She brought healing herbs when my Miguel nearly died from snakebite, refused payment, only asked that I teach my daughter to trust her own knowing." Sarah blinked against tears. "She always believed in women, said we were the keepers of stories." "Then tell yours," Maria said gently. "Loud enough that no one forgets again." Downstairs, Luke waited at the kitchen table, a map spread before him. Charlie stood nearby, coffee in one hand, revolver strapped across his chest. Luke looked up when she entered. "How's the hand?" "Still here," Sarah said. "Still shaking." He nodded. "That'll pass." She stepped closer to the table, eyes scanning the map. "The church records are locked up in the mission building behind the pulpit. I remember the way, but they keep armed guards now, deputized by Thompson." Charlie sipped his coffee. "We need a distraction to draw them out." "I can give you one," Sarah said. Her voice was quiet but certain. Luke straightened. "You're not going back into town. I know the people there. I know how they think. If I show up in the market square in broad daylight, they'll assume I came crawling back, ready to surrender. They'll arrest you." "Maybe," she said. "But while they're busy dragging me into the church for questioning, you and Charlie slip in behind." Luke's jaw flexed. "It's too dangerous." "So is waiting," she replied. "They've already started the paperwork to seize my property. Every day we sit here, they tighten the noose." Maria entered with a satchel of provisions. "You'll need warm bread, dried meat, and something sweet. No revolution runs on empty stomachs." Luke turned to Sarah, frustrated but unwilling to argue. "If we do this, we do it fast. In and out. No speeches, no martyrdom." Sarah gave him a ghost of a smile. "No promises." By midday, they were riding toward Miller's Creek, 3 figures against the snow-covered hills. Luke and Charlie peeled off at the ridge, circling east. Sarah rode alone down the main road, her mother's pouch tucked beneath her collar, her heart hammering like hooves against packed earth. The town looked the same. Too neat, too quiet. Shutters open, watching. People froze when they saw her. Whispers rose like smoke. She dismounted in front of the church steps, tied her horse, and walked up the wooden stairs as if she had every right in the world. The doors opened before she reached them. James Blackwood stood in the frame, his sheriff's badge gleaming in the winter sun. "Sarah Winchester," he drawled. "Didn't expect to see you breathing." She met his eyes. "Then I suppose today's full of surprises. Town council's been looking for you." "I figured," Thought I'd save them the trouble. James studied her, something unreadable flickering in his expression. You here to beg for mercy? No, she said. I'm here to see the books. He smirked. That's bold. I'm my mother's daughter. Before he could answer, shouting erupted from the street. A rider galloped through town, one of Thompson's men. Raiders on the North Road, he yelled. Double M cowboys, armed! James cursed under his breath and turned to the deputy behind him. Get the records. Lock 'em down. Sarah lunged. Now, Charlie! A window behind the church shattered. Luke and Charlie burst through the back, rifles raised. The deputy froze. James spun, hand on his gun, but Luke's voice stopped him. Don't! The church filled with tension, thick as smoke. Sarah rushed past them toward the council room where she remembered the ledgers were stored. She yanked open a drawer and pulled out a bundle of bound documents, her fingers shaking as she scanned signatures. Her mother's name, and next to it, an erasure. Faded ink, a second hand forged in its place. She turned to Luke, breath ragged. They rewrote the records, made it look like she gave up the land freely. Charlie flipped through the pages. Here, look, transactions to Thompson. Dates don't match up. It's a trail of lies. Luke folded the papers carefully and tucked them into his coat. Let's go. Outside, townspeople had gathered, weapons drawn, but when they saw Sarah standing beside Luke, when they saw James hesitate, something shifted. Sarah stepped forward, lifting her mother's medicine pouch. This town was built on truth and courage. You buried both, but they've come up through the frost. Luke raised his voice. Any man who stops us today stands against justice, against honor. No one moved. James lowered his gun. Go. Luke, Sarah, and Charlie mounted their horses and turned back toward the Double M, proof in hand, the wind at their backs, and the lies of Miller's Creek crumbling behind them like rot beneath snow. The fire came just after midnight. Sarah sat at Luke's desk, the stolen church records spread out before her, each page a splintered piece of truth pulled from the ice. Maria had brought tea, steaming strong and spiced with something ancient, but it sat forgotten now, gone cold. Across the room, Luke leaned against the mantel, arms folded, watching her trace the forged signatures, the tampered deeds. They thought no one would notice, she said quietly. They thought time would do their work for them. It usually does, Luke replied, but not this time. Sarah held up a page where her mother's name had been scraped away, rewritten in another hand. She fought to the end. They called it an accident, drowned in the lake. But these proved motive. Charlie knocked once and stepped inside, coat dusted with snow. Scouts spotted riders near the ridge. 6 or 7 men. Didn't approach, just watching. Thompson's loyalists, Luke muttered. Could be, Charlie said, but they didn't ride off when we lit the night torches. That means they're waiting. For what? Sarah asked, though she already knew. For the strike, Luke answered. A fire, a raid, a bullet through the window. Whatever makes the records disappear. Charlie laid a shotgun on the table. We'll be ready. But Sarah stood and gathered the papers, carefully sliding them into her mother's old medicine pouch, now sewn with reinforced lining. No, she said. They want these burned. Then we don't keep them in the house. Luke stepped forward. You're not leaving. I'm hiding them, she corrected. In the root cellar, behind the false wall, the place Papa built for his hunting rifles. Luke studied her, then nodded slowly. I'll come with you. The wind screamed around the eaves as they crossed the snowy yard, boots crunching ice. Inside the root cellar, the lantern cast long shadows across jars of preserved peaches and barrels of salted meat. Sarah moved to the back wall, fingers finding the loose panel. Behind it, a hollow cavity, dry and untouched. She slid the pouch inside and replaced the boards. When she turned, Luke was watching her, not just her movements, but her. I don't know what comes next, he said. Neither do I. But I know this, he stepped closer. Whatever happens to this town, whatever happens to those men, I'm standing beside you. Sarah reached up, touched the side of his face. They came after my mother because she uncovered a crime. Now they'll come after anyone who helps me. That includes you. Luke smiled faintly. Then they'll learn I bite. She laughed, soft and tired. I've never been good at leaning on people. Well, he murmured, you're not leaning. You're choosing. Something in her stilled then, like the world took a breath just for them. And for the first time she chose him. She rose on her toes and kissed him in the dark, amidst the scent of dust and iron and the silence of buried things. It wasn't the kind of kiss that asked for anything. It just answered. They returned to the house just as the first bottle crashed through the window. The fire ignited instantly, oil and flame licking the curtains like a predator. Sarah screamed, and Luke tackled her to the floor as a second bottle exploded against the far wall. Maria was shouting from the kitchen. Charlie and two ranch hands burst in from outside, guns drawn, extinguishers in hand. "The barn's lit too," someone yelled. "They're torching the horses." Luke was already moving. "Sarah, go with Maria. Get to the storm shelter. Charlie and I will drive them off." But Sarah didn't move. Her voice cut through the smoke. "They didn't come to burn the ranch. They came for the truth." "The pouch is safe," Luke said. "You saw to that." Sarah's eyes flared. "But they don't know that. If they think it's here, they'll keep coming." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we give them what they're after," she said, "or make them think we did." They let the blaze eat the front room. Charlie's men drove off the attackers. 2 wounded, 1 captured. The others scattered into the hills. By sunrise, the ranch house was half burned, smoke curling from the broken windows like a secret let go. Luke stood on the porch with soot on his hands and blood on his shirt. Sarah walked beside him, bruised but unbroken. In the snow, they laid the scorched remains of a decoy pouch, stuffed with ash and scraps from the cook stove. The attackers would return to Thompson and report it. The records gone, the proof lost. But beneath the frost, behind a hidden wall, the truth waited, alive, waiting to rise. The wind shifted. Smoke from the burned-out wing of the ranch had barely cleared when the first telegram arrived. Word of the attack on the Double M spread faster than Thompson anticipated. But what he hadn't counted on, what none of them had, was how quickly sympathies could change once blood was spilled in daylight. Within 48 hours, 2 neighboring ranches pledged men to help protect the Winchester claim. 3 townsfolk from Miller's Creek, people Sarah hadn't spoken to in years, sent letters of quiet support. And then came the marshal. Marshal Elijah Grant arrived on a slate-gray morning, his badge dulled by years and sun, but his voice sharp as broken glass. "Name's been on my desk for over a decade," he said as he dismounted. "Catherine Winchester, now her daughter." He looked at the ruined front of the house, the boards still blackened with smoke. "You think they're trying to finish what they started?" Sarah stood her ground. "They're trying to erase it." Grant nodded. "Then I suppose it's time someone finally listened." They gathered in the newly cleared parlor, where soot still lingered in the beams. Sarah unwrapped her mother's beadwork, the pouch salvaged from the false wall, and laid it on the table. Each strand, each color told part of the story. Every knot a ledger, every loop a buried name. Maria served coffee in silence. Charlie stood guard by the door, his rifle leaning close, and Luke sat beside Sarah, steady as stone, while she spoke. "This isn't just about my mother," Sarah said, her voice calm but iron-bound. "This is about what Miller's Creek was built on. Poisoned wells, forged deeds, the graves they pretended never existed." Marshal Grant watched her, unmoving. "And you have witnesses?" "We do," she said. "Survivors. My grandmother's people. My uncle Running Bear. They remember. They buried the ones you didn't." Grant looked to Luke. "You vouch for this?" "I do," Luke said. "And more. The men who tried to burn us out said Thompson's heading west, riding for the capital to intercept a federal inspection coming next week." "Inspection?" "A new land claims committee," Sarah explained. "One that doesn't answer to Thompson's friends. My mother's records. They could shift the entire valley's future." Grant exhaled through his teeth. "Then we ride." They moved fast. Luke, Sarah, Charlie, and 6 of the marshal's men. By nightfall, they'd crossed the Black Hollow Pass and reached the old stagecoach trail where Thompson was rumored to ride. They found his camp by the Red Creek crossing. Not by mistake, Sarah knew exactly where to look. Her mother had marked that crossing in her final entry, circled it in red ink. It was there that Catherine Winchester had once met with the land office clerk in secret. It was there she'd hidden the original ledger page, stitched into her saddle blanket. It was there, 15 years later, that her daughter would finish the story. They rode in just after dawn. Thompson's men scrambled for rifles, but the marshal's voice cut through the chill like thunder. "Hold your fire! Territorial law!" Sarah dismounted, stepping forward before anyone could stop her. Thompson rose slowly from the fire, older, more ragged than she remembered. His eyes burned like they had that night at the lake. "You think this ends with you?" he hissed. "You're just a girl with beads." "No," Sarah said. "I'm a daughter with memory, and a woman with proof." From her saddlebag, she pulled her mother's final journal, the real one, water-warped, burned at the edges, but still legible. She'd salvaged it from the fire the night of the attack. Thompson never knew it existed. The marshal took it in his hands, flipping through the pages, his brow furrowed. "These records, these match what we've found in Helena. And this," he pointed to a beaded map sewn into the back cover, "this corresponds to land boundaries we never understood before. It's not art. It's evidence." Sarah looked back at Thompson. "My mother tried to stop you. You drowned her for it. Then you tried to drown me. Now the truth rises." Thompson lunged, but he didn't make it far. Luke met him halfway, one punch, clean and hard. Thompson collapsed at the marshal's feet, groaning. Charlie tied his hands. They returned to Miller's Creek as spring rain fell across the plains. But the town was different now. The people had seen too much. The lie had cracked open, and once light pours through, it never fully retreats. Within a week, formal charges were filed. By month's end, 3 other council members were in custody, and by summer, the land rights were formally returned, half to the Blackfoot families who once called it home, half to the descendants of those who had fought to protect it. Luke and Sarah married in a quiet ceremony beneath the cottonwoods by Crow's Lake. They wore no rings. Instead, they exchanged hand-woven bracelets made from Catherine's final pattern. Blue, silver, and red. Truth, justice, memory. Maria cried. Charlie gave a speech too long and too loud. Marshal Grant even smiled once, and when the wind blew across the water, Sarah felt her mother's presence in the rustle of the trees, in the hush of the reeds, in the peace that followed. Back at the Double M, Sarah hung the pouch beside the front door. Not hidden now, not secret, a reminder to all who entered, the truth was never lost. It had always been waiting, like a fire in the walls, just waiting to be set free. They tried to silence her mother with fear. They tried to erase her with fire and water. But the truth doesn't drown. It doesn't burn. It waits, patient and stubborn, until someone brave enough dares to carry it forward. Sarah Winchester wasn't just a survivor. She became the voice of the voiceless, the memory of those forgotten, and the spark that brought justice to a land built on secrets. And now I want to hear from you. What part of Sarah's journey moved you the most? Do you believe that the truth, once hidden, always finds its way back to the light? Let me know in the comments. And if this story stayed with you, if it stirred something in your heart, make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I've got another tale for you. One that proves courage and love can change everything. Until then, remember, the land remembers, and some stories are just waiting to be told.